Hi, I'm Kim, and I'm with the Gen Jones Chronicles. I started this project because I want to tell stories of people who were born between the years 1954 to 1964, sometimes called Generation Jones. Most of us, and I was born in 1958, we grew up hearing that we were part of the baby boomer generation. But that generation is a really big cohort of people. It covers about 20-year span. And in the 1990s, commentator Jonathan Pontel began discussing an idea that there's a generation in between the baby boomers and Gen X. And he called this Generation Jones. And I read about Generation Jones, I think it was in about 2013. When I first read about it, the idea immediately resonated with me. I had never felt like I was a boomer. I was still in middle school when the boomers were protesting the war in Vietnam in college, for example. When a lot of baby boomer women were writing and talking about feminism, Ms. Magazine first came out, I was still in middle school or high school. So this idea really captivated me that we were a different generation. And shortly after, I think the book came out in 2013 or 2014, Meg Wolitzer published a book called The Interestings, which was a story about friends who grew up the same time I grew up. And I think hearing about Jonathan Pontel's idea and then reading that book really reinforced the idea for me that stories of our generation had mostly been missing from popular culture. Um, so I retired at the end of 2021, and my husband and I are traveling all over the world. We're part of those group of people, sometimes called slow travelers, nomads, digital nomads. So we live for months at a time in many different countries. And when we're not out exploring these exciting places where we're staying, we work on creative projects. We're comfortable working on laptops. And so I guess it was about the middle of last year, 2022, I decided it was time to launch an oral history project on Generation Jones. And um, I had some support, both moral support, but also ideas and collaborative support from a group of people who had received grants from the Prepared Mind Project, which is one of my husband's creative projects. And they really helped me sort of formulate what the project would look like. And so this oral history project involves me interviewing people who were born in the cohort between 1954 and 1964. And I've been able so far to interview about a dozen people from all over the world. We've been traveling, and so some of my interviewees live in and grew up in Australia, New Zealand, Fiji, the United States. And so I am going to launch these audio interviews as a podcast channel associated with the Gen Jones Chronicles. I'm sharing the stories with the public. I think that's my main motivation, but I'm also looking for themes and observations about the world as experienced by Gen Jonesers. And I eventually hope to include a platform where people can share their own stories, people from this cohort, on the website, and maybe to launch a conversation between Gen Jonesers at some point. And so these are things that I'm looking forward to. I'll show you what my website looks like. And for those of you who are listening to this as an audio, the website is located at www.genjoneschronicles, CHRONICLES.com. And for those of you who are looking at this on video, this is what the website looks like. And we'll be launching that soon. And here's a chart for those of you looking at this on video that lists the generations, and it shows you where Generation Jones, the years that the people would have been born, 1954 to 1964, and their ages in 2023. So we would be between the ages of 59 and 69 years old. And the other generations on this chart, if you're listening on audio, the greatest generation, who would now be 96 to 101, the silent generation, who would be 78 to 95 years old, the baby boomers, who are 1946 to 1953, would be between 70 and 77, then Gen Jones, Gen X. Those would be people who are now between the ages of 43 and 58. Millennials between the ages of 27 and 42, and Gen Z are people between the ages of 11 and 26. And the source of this chart information is Beresford Research, www.beresfordresearch.com. That's where I got the information. And finally, if you're watching on video, you can see these questions. These are the questions that I'm asking the interview subjects. The interviews last about an hour. And in addition to getting basic name, when they were born, where they were born information, I then ask them to describe themselves in ways that they think are important. I ask them to look back on their childhood, 2 or 3 things that stand out as being characteristic of growing up at that time. I asked them to look at their education. What 2 or 3 major experiences with education affected them during their adulthood? Think about the work they've done over their lifetime. What are the 2 or 3 biggest differences in their work life from when they started employment to now? To talk about some world or national events that happened during their memory that were big or momentous. I asked them to compare family life during their adult years to family life when they were growing up, to describe the most important technology shifts in their lifetime and how that's affected them personally or professionally, to talk about changes or no changes in attitudes related to race, gender, sexual identity, ethnicity, and disability over their lives, what they think about that, and then whether they consider themselves to be a member of one of these generational cohorts. And so those are the basic questions that I'm asking the Gen Jonesers. I hope that you can join me as I explore these themes and listen to these stories with me. And please feel free to email me. My email address is Kim, Kim, at GenJonesChronicles.com. And thank you very much for listening.